Good morning. Welcome to the Voice of Bold Business Radio, where we're talking word art. And we're talking word art for two reasons. One, it is the first conversation that I ever had with Eric, our special guest today. Two, it's an interesting concept when you break it down. You think of these things like word clouds, which is actually what this conversation that Eric and I had was all about. Yet if you think about it, the words we use, the way we use them, the art that comes from that, the beauty, the creation that we choose every single day in our purposeful action also make up this word art. And we're talking adventure today. We're talking risk taking. We are talking who knows where this conversation will go. And if you're flying with the uncomfortable, you're in the right place. Let me introduce you to Eric, and you will get to meet him right after our intro. So Eric Sprinkle is an adventurer and speaker who has traveled the world. He's summiting active volcanoes. That's not what I thought it said the two times I read that, Eric. Well, in New Zealand, he swam with sea turtles in Guam. He navigated the man-made canyons of Japan, and he kayaked along glaciers in Alaska. Now, he's in Colorado, as am I, and he most recently has worked for the U.S. Air Force as a swiftwater rescue instructor. Wow. And a whitewater guide instructor. Okay, I'm serious. We're going to talk about how do you apply these amazing experiences to staying open and learning and getting used to the risks that we face every day. Maybe not as exciting as that, but still risks every day. Maybe. We'll be back right after this.
Welcome to the Voice of Bold Business, the show that provides everything smart leaders need to evaluate situations, build relationships, and create solutions. Jessica Dewell candidly talks about the skills necessary to build tenacity and do more with less. And now, here's Jessica.
I have to tell you, Tuesdays are really my favorite day. And Eric, this is the reason that this is my favorite day, having conversations like we're going to have today. Now, have you already run like 10 miles and had a gigantic breakfast and you're on the second half of your day, even though it's 11 a.m. here in Colorado?
I answered emails and I'm drinking Coke sitting here with Jess Dewell. I think my day is off to a good start.
I love it. Well, always a good start when we get to have good conversation like this. So thank you.
Yes.
Coke, huh? You're a morning Coke drinker?
Caffeine is my drug of choice. Whatever delivery system works. I love the dance of carbon dioxide, sugar, and wonderful caffeine. So don't judge me. Don't judge me. I know.
Speaking of how you describe that, I mean, this concept of word art, what we do with the words that we use and how they embed themselves into our brains are such a big part and an often overlooked part of what we're doing each day in the world. And, you know, in our teaser this morning out there, we talked about self-centeredness. And actually, we didn't talk about it. Eva brought it up. And of course I went, oh, this is so great. Let's do the flip side, right? The flip side of being open is closed. And this concept of having, you know, this closed mind means we end up getting ourselves in this kind of a box. And for as connected as we say we are we really, I mean, in your mind and in your opinion, are we really truly connected, or have we become a super self-centered society?
Right? Self-centered society, of course, we all know this. We all suspect it. We see it out there. Of course, you know, it's an on-demand society. We get what we want from Amazon Prime. Thank you, Amazon. But we don't even go out to the mailbox anymore. It's right on our doorstep. Why do we need to go out of our way to meet people? I can do it over Facebook Live. I can have a good conversation with Jess and I'm done, right? Connectivity, community, investing in people outside myself. Do I really need to do this? Does it really make me a better person, or isn't this just fine?
Oh, now we're talking just good enough. Not the best. Okay. So how do you define not good or just good enough? How do you define that? This is enough.
Just good enough. Well, you know, for me, my performance, my metric of performance is, does it work? Does it perform? If you are performing in life, we're pretty much good at that point. Now I got a secondary metric, and because I'm an adventure speaker, it's fun. But think about it. When you are self-sabotaging your life, you're not having fun for a very long time. On a long enough timeline, when you're making bad decisions in work and business and relationships, you're not having fun. So call me crazy, but I say fun is actually a fairly good metric for Is my life on track? Are my decisions going in good, healthy directions? Because when life's awful, we want to change. And when life's fun, we're probably doing the right thing.
And what if our life is awful and we decide to go swim with the turtles in Guam? Are we really going to have fun?
That's up to you whether or not you're going to have fun. You can be miserable and swim with turtles in Guam as well. I'm saying when you step outside your comfort zone, this is when you open yourself up to change, that life change that is going to take the awful, the suckitude, and move it over to freedom and embracing, yeah, who you truly are, not who you want to be, not who you perceive yourself to be, truly knowing who you are, what you're about, what your limits are, what you like, what you don't like, and not just having this perception of self, right? The perception of self and the reality of self. For the viewers at home listening to the audio, the speaker is holding his hands far apart. They're not the same thing. Right?
You have this top of mind. Yes. Okay, so we're talking about this concept of self. We're talking about this concept of opening ourselves up, having this other adventure, and definitely throwing in some fun as a metric, which I think is a really important metric. We end up, we actually, it's easy to become so involved with ourselves that we forget things. We're interested in having the right diet and the right exercise and the right this. And by the way, I still to this day find those things to be the closest thing to torture in the entire world. Okay. And I have to work really hard. And it's taken many years and it's starting to be fun. Well, not the exercise part, but the other things I said.
Right.
So there's hope for exercise. Not that I don't do it. It's just that how do you do it in a way that has fun? Which means what you do and what I do could be very different to get to the same end result of using your two metrics that you were sharing with us earlier.
Yes.
And was there a time that you caught yourself in this place of suckitude, I believe, or was it suckage? I can't remember the exact.
The root word is suck. Well,
Yes.
However you use it, however you
use
dress
it there.
it up. Yeah.
When there was a time that sucked,
Right.
that you were like, aha, I noticed this. And now how did you, one, realize that you noticed, and two, what did you do about it?
Right. Well, the good news is it's pretty easy to notice when you're in that season of life known as Sucktober. It's easy to recognize because it's awful. It's awful, and you're not happy. And if you can disguise, like you said, our world is about self-improvement. Your audience is some pretty driven, self-motivated people. So it's real easy to get in that self-improvement cycle and not notice, but the people around you notice. The people around you will tell you, your spouse, your kids, your friends, they will tell you, you are not the same person you were 6 months ago. You started that new business, you started that new team, you're in that new leadership position, and you know what? You're not as much fun to be around. You don't seem to be having as much fun in life. There's that fun metric again. But I'm saying, you're there. For me, it was after a reorganization and an IT organization. There I am, used to be doing like 5 different jobs. Now I'm doing 1. And it's just not working. The traction's not there. You're waking up in the morning. You're not excited about what you're doing. The cues are all there saying something needs to change. And so the question for me was, well, what should I do? Well, yeah, they eliminated my position shortly after. And that changed it for me. And thank goodness for circumstance, because yes, I was out of there, now free to ask myself, what should I be doing? And life went in a very different direction after that.
You know what I really like about the story that you just shared is that it didn't matter that the signs were all there. You weren't quite ready to pull the trigger, and the universe showed up and said, I'm going to do it for you.
Absolutely.
And so realistically, if we have to backdoor in, at some point, there's going to be that cosmic 2x4 that shows up, and that's going to be your new door.
Right. Thank goodness. Yes.
Yeah. And I think circumstance is everything, but there's a fear. There's a fear around our obligations and our responsibilities and some other things, but that's not really where I want to go. What I want to go is, I think there's a fear specifically around not knowing what we value. And the fact that if we just left without a plan is for those of us who need plans to feel secure. There are many of us out there that are like that. I'm not one of those, but they're out there. And so you've got this concept of having this plan to be able to move forward. And so all the signs are there, but the plan isn't made. So the universe comes in and goes, in spite of the plan, here we go.
Right.
And I actually think we have problems making plans more because regardless of the fact that there's a plan or just some idea, we don't know what we value. And so we don't really know who we are or where our stake is in the ground. And so I'm curious for you in your work, how you get people to be able to put that stake in the ground, because then we know what's comfortable and uncomfortable. Then we know what we like and we don't like.
Right. Well, the problem is fear. You say it so well. It's okay. Yeah, we fear. I'm going to boil it down. I think the fear, specifically revolves around loss, losing my money, my resources, losing my loved ones, losing my income, losing my stuff. But there's another version of fear that says, if I move forward and I make the wrong decision, I'm going to lose out on an opportunity. If I had chosen A, I would have had a wonderful opportunity. I chose B, and it wasn't amazing. I chose to speak to Jess Dewell after an NSA event, and now I get to appear on her radio show. Obviously, I made the right choice, but it's so awful because I could have made this other choice and not spoken to you. I don't know. So we also have this fear that also is kind of limiting our choices going forward, not just holding us back. And that's where I think the greatest way you can attack that is knowing yourself, knowing what you can do, what you can't do, taking your past performance and leading with that going forward and saying, you know what, I've been here, done this before. It worked out okay. It's going to work out again this time. That's how we get rid of the fear of loss, knowing that, we can be just a little more flexible, and we can know that past performance sometimes is an indicator of where things are going to go.
Okay, so I see this, I'm hearing this, and I'm thinking about that box, right? When we are totally wrapped up in our own selves, whether we're effectively communicating inside this box or not is a whole other story. We're just talking about the fact that we're in this box and we're limited and we're bumping up against this box in different ways. And we feel like we have to make a plan, but there's so much fear. We're not sure we can rearrange the edges of the box or get rid of the box altogether. And you're talking about knowing yourself. So I know a lot of people, Eric, I know, and this becomes true in a lot of the work that I do. Know a lot of people who think they know who they are. And they can't answer questions like, what is the most important thing in your life today? And they can't answer questions like, what would, how is what you're doing today allowing you to live your dream? Those are some pretty big questions. And those are questions that teach us about who we are, but there are probably other ones too. So what is your experience? If somebody says, oh yeah, I know who I am and I've got all this stuff, if you pull back and dig in a little, how often is it true? And if it's not, how do you help them safely move into that since they already have claimed it? They just have to see it and experience it, right?
And thank goodness I work in the outdoors, because here's the beautiful, beautiful thing about wilderness and outdoorship. There are no posers in the outdoors. You can talk a big game, you can represent, you can lead with strength, whatever you want, right? That putting forward confidence and but when you get out there and you're about to jump in a raft, push out into some cold, fast-moving water and drop into a 1,000-foot river gorge where you and the people in the boat together are going to work to maneuver through fast-moving channels of fast-moving water, large raft-flipping wave, minor obstacles, and large boulders, creating recirculating hydraulics that should you fall into, you could drown or be bodily injured badly. When you get to that place, your bluster and your talk accounts for nothing, okay? Yeah. You are about to come face to face with who you really are, and this is where some people get really unhinged because, Jess, they know exactly who they are. They tell everyone every day who they are. They are a strong, individual. They are a leader of men. They get things done. And come to find out, maybe that's not all true. You ask, when is it when, my perception of self does not equal my reality of self? I would say never. we're always on this continuum where we're not quite overlapping. And sometimes we get way out here. Sometimes we're in here. But generally, most people, they grow farther and farther apart as they find themselves adopting personas based on their environment, right? I remember you talking in one of your shows. I'm sitting in a room full of guys twice my age. I'm the only 21-year-old in the room selling my company. What should I act like?
Yep.
Act like my mom, strong businesswoman. Act like who? What? How did you figure that out? How did you feel there?
Yeah, well, I was going to use a different example, but we could totally do that. I felt like I was playing dress up wearing my mother's clothes in this room. It's really how I felt. And I didn't know how to act. So I didn't say a lot. I just observed a lot. I listened. I figured out the ropes. And then, I realized that my work was better done not in that room.
Yeah, right.
Right. And so what did I learn? I learned a strength of myself. I took a strength that I had, my observation skill, and I took my uncertainty, I took my fear, I took all the ambiguity surrounding me in this whole new situation that I don't understand. And there was definitely posturing going on. So it was even harder to understand from the outside, right? I took it through my observation skill, and I said, okay, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to use my strength. And by the way, this is hindsight 2020. I did not sit at that table and think that. It took me like 10 years to figure this out. That's what I did. And that's what I did every time I was faced with a new problem or a new situation or a new thing that I thought at any moment, there's going to be no ground under my feet anymore. I would be like, okay, so what can I see? And then part of my seeing is, what do I feel? And what is the experience in the air around? So it's more than just what I can observe and logically think about in this brain. I use the heart brain and I use my gut brain of where am I in all of these different things. And so that's where I would say I'm coming from in that sense. So I think you asked a good question, because we all could probably do the same. Even if it was a problem we faced that we believe we failed after, the fact that we can own the failure and still think about it means it doesn't stay a failure. It gets assimilated. It gets used. It becomes that thing that makes us bounce, that build when we fall down. We get bouncier as we go because we can recognize when we've fallen before, and a little more padding and a little more padding and a little more padding each time. And I love that part about personal development and just our willingness. You were talking about strength in the wilderness, and I'm like, yes. The strength of ego has to go goodbye. And because there are a whole bunch of other things about teamwork and collaboration I think we could probably learn from in this conversation as well.
All day long.
You take that and you're like, okay, so how do you do that when you like seemingly have control over your situation? By the way, that was all in air quotes. that seeming control can be our downfall. And I think it's also potentially a type of fear. And I want to work in a question that we have right here, Eric. Harry is asking a question. So anybody listening want to join in the conversation? Hashtag VBB Radio. Email us at radio@reddirection.com. Okay, Harry's question. Am I getting this right? Being self-centered is actually a type of fear?
You want me to jump in on that?
Yeah, do that. Then there's another question.
Well, let me ask you this. Jess, you were in that situation. Yeah. Were you fearful in that situation, feeling like you had to dress up in your mother's clothes? Were you fearful? Maybe a little bit. You can. I
would say yes.
Yeah. And were you but was that coming from a place of selfishness? Because I'm guessing not.
In that case, I kind of thought I might have been found out, because somehow I was 21 and was able to be part of this team that sold this company and now was in this other room with all these other people who work a completely different way. And what if my way was wrong? There was a fear. There was the imposter syndrome, I think, was definitely present.
Yes. But I would say, you know what? The imposter syndrome is not about selfishness. Okay, Enron. Okay, you guys are dirtbags. Selfishness. Goldman Sachs, you screwed up our economy totally because you guys were grabbing all you could at everyone's expense. That's selfishness, and that's a problem. But I don't believe lack of knowledge of yourself and how you interact with people, I don't think it always comes from a selfish reason. I'm saying it can be two. It can be selfish or it can be fear. It's an either or, not a both and. Does that clear up the question or just make it much more ambiguous?
Well, it changes the second part of the question. And so I'm going to tell you the question, and I think we should keep going down the path we've gone. So, Harry, we've hijacked your question for
Awesome.
a talking point.
Thank you, Harry.
The second part of the question is, so then and by the way, I actually think in this case, I'm going to just totally throw this out there. My inkling is, could self-centeredness also be preservation or self-protection? So when we're using the word I'm going to think about that for this next part of the question anyway. Let's think about that. Okay.
Yeah.
So, are there different types of self-centeredness? Because I meet some pretty self-centered people and they're anything but afraid.
Yes.
So how do you want to take this next part?
Oh, well, let me break it down this way.
Perfect.
Self-centeredness, let's break it out into two different directions. There's self-seeking and there's self-focused. Jess, I believe people who are going out and trying to grab all they can at everyone's expense, those are self-seeking people, right? They're just trying to better themselves. Self-focused, though, here's the problem. Again, the audience listening to your podcast are some driven, motivated, serious alpha dogs. They are very self-focused, but not because they're self-seeking. They're self-focused because they're so driven towards self-improvement, towards self-betterment, how they're being seen by others, how they can enable others by how they are perceived by others. That's very self-focused, but it's not necessarily about them. That's where I think the danger comes, because we say, oh, people are, they're very self-absorbed. Are they, or are they just very focused on themselves so that they can, perceive and be, better in the business world that they occupy?
Different, flipping it around. Scott would use the word reframe. He's a master at reframing things. And I call it just turning that problem upside down. So you're looking at a reaction. This concept of when we're looking at somebody else and we can tell that they are something, can we flip it around and figure out what is actually the driver behind it? It could be fear. It could be knowledge. It could be downright drive. It could also be that they are called that at all costs, that can unfortunately include casualties along the way, which I think is a learning curve. I mean, if we're talking about this growth and this piece, if we're going to just say nobody's going to get in our way at all costs, okay, at least we know what we're willing to do. We know we're willing to do what it takes.
Yes.
And then the next piece is, can we really deal with the outcome? Like if you and I hadn't had that conversation and you weren't here, you would not be having as much fun right now. We know this.
Yes. Of course. Of course.
But it's that choice here or the choice there. How are we doing, how are we going to do that? So I think we really need to be thinking about choice. And so every day we are faced with choices, this or this, this or this, this or this. And in dire situations, we might have a bad choice and a badder choice, or a worse choice and a worser choice, if we're going to use root words and do whatever we want with them.
We'll allow.
I'm glad. Yes. You're going to have to come back. I can keep making up words. I like this. Yeah. Actually, by the way, that wouldn't stop me. I make up words occasionally.
Do it.
This concept, though, of what we're doing and how we're doing it in this choice. And if we look at it and we say, oh my gosh, they're only poor, we might call poor choices or undesirable, both have undesirable outcomes. How do you look at those and flip them around? Because I'm like, oh, look, I have two really bad choices. This is a challenge now. Right.
Because now we're coming into my forte, risk-taking. Because just if we're talking about going forward, not in a fearful sense, but going forward, trying to, make good choices in life. Thank goodness, most of the times those A/B choices, we're either unaware of the choice. It just seemed like the most natural thing was to go, talk to Jess Dewell because the other person, was not, attractive or whatever. I don't know. You don't even see it as a choice. Other times, you have that A/B choice, but you know what? You have no clue what choice B would have looked like, so you don't feel like you're missing anything. I went with choice A. It was a fine choice. I have no idea what I was missing out. It's often our perception that choice B could have been fantastic. and I might have missed out on fantasticness, right? I chose
Yeah.
to stay home and watch movies with my spouse on Friday night. There's a part of me that says everybody else is out partying and I'm missing it. Well, that can be ridiculous, okay? You're actually having a good time with your spouse. Just be quiet and be here now. You're having a good time. So I think there's that noise of, choice A, choice B, what do we do? But ultimately comes down to risk taking, which is why I'm here talking with you today.
Okay, so before we get to risk taking, which
Mm.
I'm super excited that we're getting to this place. Cynthia
Totally.
asked a question about our previous part of the conversation.
Do it.
She's asking, I always thought that being self-centered was an intentional action. But if I can change what happens gradually to recognize that we're on that path, how do we know we're on the path before it's too late? So how do we make a change before we become a terrible person? I think would be a good
Right. Right.
could be. Oh, well, I hope that each of us is surrounded by people that will show us. Like you said
Absolutely.
earlier, Eric, that was one of those things where it in the cues around, provided you're willing to look. And sometimes we're so driven, we're so strong, we're so outspoken, we're so intimidating to other people that they won't tell us. They just watch us from the sidelines, saddened by our path.
Right.
And so if I were to say, before it's too late, it's never too late, number one. Doesn't
Yeah.
matter. I mean, number one, there's always a way to change. There's never a
Always.
point that it's too late. And two,
Always.
the second part of that, I would say, you know what? Cynthia, your question is all about awareness. And you guys know that this is what I am all about, awareness. And once we start recognizing that it's there, then we can start to do something about it. We can decide,
Absolutely.
do we like it or do we not like it? Is it too risky? Am I doing this because I'm averting risk? And you're listening to the voice of Bold Business Radio. This is program 164, Word Art, with our special guest, Eric Sprinkle. And so far, we've talked about everything but word art. However, I want you to listen to the descriptions that we're getting from Eric. I also want you to go back and hear some of the points that have set us up now for this risk-taking piece, because the words that we use, and notice we're switching words in our conversation. The words that we use matter. The words that we use not only reinforce what we think about ourselves, but they also reinforce what we want others to think about us. And since we get to control both, right? We get to control the words we use and how we think about ourselves, which, while we can't control what other people think of us, we can influence it in that way. And so I want to pick right up into this concept of risk taking, because sometimes the only way forward is through taking a risk, going someplace that's uncomfortable.
It's not just about climbing mountains, right? It's about any uncomfortable choice. Cynthia, you have to ask your friends, am I being too self-centered? Am I focused on me a little too much? And of course, they say, Cynthia, you're a monster. And you're like, hey, that was a rhetorical question. I didn't really mean that. Okay, it's a risk, right? It's a risk taking. How do you get around that? You know yourself better. How do you get to know yourself better?
That's what, you know what? You are talking to the wrong person.
No, I'm talking to the right person, because you already gave the answer.
I know I did.
Well, you gave it so eloquently earlier.
Thank you.
I'm 100% with you, Jess. It's about experience.
Yeah.
Good experience, bad experience. The more you experience, the more you fail and get up and recover. The bouncier you get. I think that's what you said.
I did say that. We get bouncier.
We get bouncier. Okay, that's on your next T-shirt. You do. You're right. The more we fail, the bouncier we get. But the simple fact is, boy, when you're talking about risk taking, one of the key benefits to mitigating risk is past experience. You have a confidence from what you've come out of before. Worst case scenario, boil it down. Look, if it doesn't kill me, I just get bouncier. So you know what? Give it a try. Give it a try. What's the worst case that could happen? You learn more about yourself. And when you go into these situations earlier, and now you're Cynthia, and you're like, you know what? I've had enough experiences. I know when I'm getting to that point where I'm getting a little me focused, and I need to shine the light on other people a little bit, right? So absolutely, you said it already, Jess, right? You're doing my part for me here, okay? It's about experience, getting out there, taking risks, and finding those experiences that grow you and challenge you, but you got to get outside your comfort zone. That's tough.
That is tough. So for those of us that are listening, we're going to answer the same question 3 ways now. We're going to just try this out. I'm going to ask you to stretch with me a little bit, Eric, because
yes.
Some people we were talking about earlier, they like a plan. So I'm thinking about a plan as a 1, 2, 3, I can check these boxes. So I
Yep.
like to look at what risk taking is from the perspective of if I followed a set of steps, what would it look like?
Mm.
And then I'm going to ask it a different way. Okay. So the first part, what is risk taking? What are the steps to learning how to take more risk?
Learning how to take more risks. Well, if you want to take more risks, you simply step outside your comfort zone. The risks will find you. Okay. But the key here is, yeah, you want to take good risks. Step number one, if you will, separate the perceived risk from the actual risk. Okay. Whitewater rafting. We talked about it earlier, right? It sounds like just certain death. But the simple fact is, Arkansas Headwaters Recreation Association had like 2.5 million people in their area 2 years ago, day users, fishermen, and whitewater rafters. Let's just say 30,000 of those people actually went through class 4, class 5 water in the Royal Gorge. Do you know how many deaths we had, Jess, on the Arkansas River in the 2014 season in the Royal Gorge?
None.
We had two.
Okay.
Two deaths on the Arkansas. Guess what?
What?
Tragically, it was a boy up near Browns Canyon, and it was an older man who fell out of a boat in a section right above the Royal Gorge. In the actual Royal Gorge, it's a big zero.
Mm-hmm.
People at home listening in your car, on the train, on your commute, I'm holding up my hand in the form of a zero. That's nobody. The simple fact is, if you're driving to the place where you're going to go whitewater rafting, that drive is actually the riskier part of your day than getting in the boat with a certified, competent guide. Okay, we have 1 million people going through these rivers and they're not dying. So the perception of risk is very, very high. But the reality of the risk is actually down here. If we get a really good guide who knows what they're doing, we actually mitigate that risk down even more. And that's part two. But let me let you answer in on that first.
Well, so I'm going to just restate here. So if I was looking for a list, the first is to just know what you're doing and know what basically the info I would call it data. You're gathering data about what do you have accessible to you in this situation. Those
Yeah.
would be really 2 steps to start being able to go, I can take more risk when I know those 2 things. Would that be
Yes.
fair to say?
Absolutely. If we were taking a Swiftwater course right now, we would be standing waist deep in freezing cold water, and I would be using the word assess. But I'm encapsulating everything you just said. Yes.
Yes. Good. And so if we were to take the same thing, risk taking, the concept of taking a risk from the perspective of the way we think, which by the way, all of your language is all about the way we think, that I can tell. So you're the big picture. It's getting out of that comfort zone. Well, okay. So when I'm feeling, and the feeling is what's actually next, I think.
Yep.
Nope, we're in the feeling place. You're talking about feeling uncomfortable. Can you put into words in your beautiful concept of descriptions and word art that what it feels like to be uncomfortable in our bodies?
Absolutely. Here's what I'm used to. It's gone. Here's what makes me feel good. It's been stripped away. Here's what makes me, and here's the problem with safety, right? That comfort and safety that inhabits my little nest that I live in each and every day. Here's the problem about comfort. You know if it's there or not, okay? Your flannel duvet feels so amazing. It's there. It's recognizable. Safety, though, safety sometimes is the illusion of safety. And let's not pretend people will not pay just as much for the illusion of safety as for safety. Now, if you think people don't lie about safety, well, they do. Obviously, they do. Ask an NFL player about someone telling them for the last 20 years, put this helmet on and smash yourself into the guy across from you as hard as you can. The helmet will protect you. Absolutely not. Ask these guys now. It's a tragedy. It's a tragedy if you ask these guys now and they have their brains have been smashed around like professional boxers. And all this time, these guys were told, no, you're wearing safety equipment. You're different. No, you're not. The illusion of safety is often what we're dealing with, Jess. And that's where, we have that illusion stripped away. That's how it feels when we're actually stepping out. Give me your thoughts.
Well, I'm listening to this, and every single person out here that's listening to the show, me included, some more recently than others on this, will have felt taken advantage of.
Yes.
And I think when we feel taken advantage of, the actual concept of it, and maybe we were and maybe we weren't, comes from this concept, this illusion that you're talking about. And so
Yes.
for those of us who don't live in this picture, this big picture concept of what risk taking is, and we lead with this idea of what we've been talking about, we have to keep track of ourselves, right? The first group, the steps, oh, well, we don't have all the information. Maybe we should ask more. We
Yes.
don't feel confident. Well, what makes us not feel confident? And how do we ask the questions to discover that, to figure out what our steps are in this situation? And in this other one, it's, oh, they're making me feel safe. Oh, they're making me feel safe. Whew. And
I like that feeling.
that's tough, because that's a big hole that if we really lead that way, and that's where our strength is, and then we always are upset because we get burned or somebody didn't do what they said they was going to do, there's a big communication issue. This concept of risk here, I think this is where I think it's the trickiest part of risk from this perspective.
Yes.
But before we dig into that, and we may not have time, but I'd like to come back, provided we can. The third way is the action piece, right?
Yes.
What are the action steps to the actions we take to get closer to risk and experience risk?
Right. I'm going to give you a super easy tips and tricks on how to take risk taking. Right. I get paid, Jess, to walk around and tell people, corporate groups, any kind of group, how do we take risks better? How do we not how do we manage risk? There's a million people who tell you how to manage risk. But when it comes down to taking risks, we have 5 people who are applying for our COO position. They all seem good. We have to pick one. How do we do that? Okay, so we're going to assess everything, right? We're going to get out there. We're going to mitigate the risk. We're going to separate the perceived risk from the actual risk. But at the end of the day, I have to take a risk. How do I do it? Because it's so unnerving. Here's the secret.
And making that choice can be unnerving. This is a great example. It's a great example. We know there are 5 choices, and we're going to pick one, and we're worried. We're going to wish we picked another. We're worried that this person isn't going to be good. It's going to be good enough, but not what we actually need for the next 5 years, whatever the case may be, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So for your list makers, I'm making my list, and I want to feel more confident about my list. I'm sorry, Jess, you and the list makers, you're going to get to a point where you're not going to feel confident, and you still need to move forward.
Agreed.
I know. How do we do it? Okay, here's the poor man's secret to going out and making risks easier. Here's the key. Risk number 1. Can I take the long way around here?
Love it.
I'm going to monopolize the conversation. Okay, number 1, you and I are made for risk. We are designed for risk taking, okay? If you have a question about that, let me ask you this. You and your staff, you and your audience, when's the last time you spent your hard-earned money going to see a movie where everything went right? 90 minutes of smiles and sunshine, right? Never happened. Never happened. You are not going to spend your money on such a piece of cheese, and Hollywood is never going to make it, because the simple fact is you and I want twists and turns in our stories. We want the hero to overcome obstacles, slaying the dragon, fighting his way through the thorny forest to rescue the princess. If we don't have that, we feel gypped. For those who say, I'm not into movies, I don't read stories like that. Okay, we still love challenge. Even if you're not a mountain climber, even if you're not into big movies, we still love challenge. Jess, would you like to take a guess what the highest viewed televised broadcast was in the last 2 years? You guys at home can play along too. What is it?
I'm going to say The Voice.
The Voice. I'm going to give you.
I have absolutely no idea. I don't watch TV. I don't even know what TV shows are on. So I'm just racking my brain for any TV show. Now,
I had to look it up. I had to look it up. I know. This is terrible. I had to look it up because I'm thinking State of the Union gets a pretty good audience.
Yeah.
It's not the State of the Union.
Okay.
The Olympic opening ceremonies, that usually is pretty good. It was down this year, 19.8 million viewers. If you want to know what Americans are drawn to, from Nielsen, we're looking at Super Bowl 2017 numbers, 111.3 million viewers.
Really?
The most viewed things are not smiles and sunshine. They're challenge, they're risk. We don't know the outcome. That's what people are viewing. And if you want to, can I blow your viewers' minds? as I was looking this up.
Absolutely, that's what we're here for.
Okay, here comes the mind grenade. Super Bowl 2017, 111.3 million viewers, Nielsen says. There's one that blows that away. Ladies and gentlemen, the 2014 FIFA World Cup, according to Kantar Media, 3.2 billion viewers. 3.2 billion viewers. Ladies and gentlemen, there are 7.6 billion people on planet Earth. Okay, that's it. 3.2 billion of them were watching the World Cup in some way, shape, or form. Ladies and gentlemen, may I suggest we have adventure and challenge and risk in our hearts. We're made for it. We're driven by it. This is what we're about. So when you're risk-taking, number one, you feel alive. You absolutely positively feel alive, okay? Number two, your brain loves risk. Your brain is a little prediction engine. It loves playing games where you try and figure out what comes next. I will prove it to you again. Hey, everybody, 2, 4, 6. Come on, it just popped into your head without even trying.
That's exactly right. How many songs that you can sing, right? All you have to do is, what do you automatically say? Right. All of these things. And I like that you're putting it this way. And the reason I was breaking it down the other way is because we're told, and this is one of the things we like to break down and break out of on the Voice of Bold Business Radio, is that we're told there's this way of doing things. And through the 20 years of work, there are definitely principles, but there is not one way we all do the same thing. Now, it makes sense if we're running reports the same way so that the data from month to month makes sense. It's also important to make sure that when we're doing things to position ourselves to be evaluated and or acquired and or consider an acquisition of another company, that we've got to have these standards that we know we can look at to have some sort of measurement. The thing is, what I hear you saying is it does not take away the risk. It does. It, in fact, in some people do this out of sport. They buy and sell companies as like it was a contact sport, like it's like it's an Ironman race. And I find that fascinating. And then of course there's extreme ironing, okay, where you take your iron and your ironing board and you go to the top of mountains and you do your ironing.
Okay, well, yeah.
Have you ever heard of this?
The height of risk taking, I didn't know, but that's
I know, literally the height of but where we're going though is we all have those things. And so maybe I might posit this is that knowing that it's an experience, knowing that we're drawing on past experience, and we may remember the details we think, but our brains are really good at telling us to reinforce our own feelings about it. So if we were to think back and actually, I say the word feel back to that experience, and how does it compare to now, to indicate, well, do I feel like this is a risk? What kind of risk is it? And am I comfortable with it? And then be able to go, and be willing, maybe I'll never get comfortable with this risk. There's something to be said for that, right?
The best things in life you should feel nervous at. Can I wrap up with my trick then, my little tip and trick? Okay, so here's your brain. It's a prediction engine. It loves filling in the blanks. You know what your brain loves even more though?
What?
Give it a problem it doesn't know the answer to immediately. It's novel, it's different, and your brain is going nuts trying to figure out all the nuances, okay? And it's doing this without you even knowing it. What you understand is, I feel nervous and I don't know what to do here. But your brain absolutely loves it, okay? Your brain is addicted to this kind of risk-taking. Just look at the gambling industry if you want insight into that. So if you want to make your brain work for you in risk-taking instead of working against you, making you feel uncomfortable, here's the key. Your brain can easily become addicted to risk-taking. Really? Yes. Go back to the gambling industry. Your brain can become addicted to risk-taking, okay? So here's what you do. Find a risk, Jess, that is associated with what you're going to be doing, what really makes you nervous. Find an associated risk that's about this easy and do it. It might be someone who, one of those COOs that I have to choose. Man, I don't know what's going on with that. But you know what? Next time I go to one of the meetings where there's somebody who I don't know them and they don't look like me, I'm going to go over and extend a hand to them. I'm going to meet them. I'm going to shake their hand and introduce myself to them. This is risky. Talking to people not like us, that's risky. It makes us feel a little nervous, but it also makes us feel alive. Once you've done that, you're going to find Go introduce yourself to someone else immediately. Immediately you notice it's not even half as hard. Okay, it's almost not even hard at all because hello, I just did it. It wasn't that bad. Now I go over. Now suddenly up your game. Get something in the middle. Next thing you know, you just kind of stair step your way up in risk, right? In challenge until you get to what is that really risky decision you have to do that has left you without sleep for 3 nights in a row. Now suddenly you get to it and it's no big deal because each one of those little risks makes the next one easier and the next one easier and the next one easier. And suddenly you are blazing new territory in your life and you're doing it without even blinking. And you feel alive like never before.
Uh-huh. And that aliveness, okay, so we're gonna look at this from a different perspective. And I'd like to posit this concept. And it's kind of I'm going to share some data and then posit the question. So not going in that order as I said it, but I probably should rephrase. So the first part is the latest neuroscience research that is out. We know that our brain works in a lot of different ways. We also know we have phrases called, oh, they wear their feelings on their sleeve, or they are gutsy. We actually have 3 brains. We have 3 parts of our bodies, our actual head brain, our heart brain, and our gut brain. And all 3 of those are turning out now that we have come this far with our technology, and the research to date is allowing us to actually measure what's going on in our heart brain and our gut brain, and that there's this concept of the interplay of the 3 of them. And so typically we have one that's going to be dominant. We do everything through our head, which is a creative space. We do everything through our heart, which is a feeling space. We do everything with our gut through a more of the risk space. And so I'd like to posit that potentially where we feel the most constrained through, if you were to look at, oh, is this a safe decision or not? Or I'm only willing to have this much success because we can only risk this much. The risk to lose can only be this high. How do we, I hear you talking about how do we employ our gut brain in a different way to actually better assess our overall risk of any situation we happen to find ourselves in, from choosing a new toothpaste to figuring out if breaking into a new market and taking on the number 1 player in the space is the right thing to do.
Right. And, that gut brain is important to listen to. It's, up here, the best description I've heard of what you're talking about is up here, we go to the museum, we look at the diorama, we read the plaque, it says, here's what's going on and here's when it took place and here's why these guys are doing this. Our gut brain looks and it says, there's a mastodon, there's some early American Eskimos, and they're holding spears at it and they're trying to take it down, right? You've got this glimpse of what's going on that you can respond to, or you can read the little plaque and respond to it. Either way, you've got 2 responses you can do. One of them is near instantaneous. The other takes a while. I would highly recommend, do not discount that feeling of nervousness or anxiety that says something's going on here, okay? This world we live in, there's risks, okay? And some of them are physical risks. Women, you know when something's going on and you should be aware of your surroundings, okay? That's a good thing to pay attention to, absolutely.
Okay, question from Lorraine. How can we preserve realistic optimism and taking risk in our decision-making? Well, that's an interesting combination of words. I can't wait to hear how you answer this one, Eric.
Optimism. Well, of course. Of course, you can have a good feeling about your decisions. Now, that doesn't change the fact that I have this wonderful, hopeful expectation of this next risk I'm going to take, and I fall flat on my face. It is a bomb. It's terrible. It's awful. That would tend to quell that optimism for the next decision. However, Lorraine, what you got to remember is every time you fail, you get bouncier, okay? So just ask Jess for the t-shirt. You get bouncier as you fail. So the key here is we need to make sure that we're not losing that hopeful expectation about, I'm going to get something good out of this. It's either going to succeed over here on its own merits, or I'm going to learn a valuable lesson over here. Either way, I'm coming away from something with something good from this.
Yep.
Sometimes it's just a little more painful, but you get bouncier.
That's right. You get bouncier. And then it comes to, so what are some ways that we can look externally? Because I know we started with a little bit of self-centeredness and the fact that we broke down self-centeredness is not always a thing, and it could be fear, and it might be one or the other within ourselves. So self-reflection is great.
Yes.
And one of the things that we were talking about when we first met was this concept of word art. And I believe the website is wordart.com. We're going to put
Yes.
that in the show notes so people could go there.
Yes.
So every single one of you that has a blog on the side that you go write your own opinions, or you have a blog for your entire business, or you're contributing in some way to content someplace, and maybe just take a look at your company website, whatever you want to do, you put in this website and it creates a word cloud based off of the words that are being used. And what I remember from our conversation that really struck me, and how you think, Eric, and how risk is important, is that really for some of us, we're like, we don't even want to know if we're self-centered and our name is the biggest word in our word cloud, right? Our name as an individual, or our name as a company. That's a risk. Do we want to know it? So there's a challenge in this.
Yes, of course. Of course.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Don't back away from challenge. The word art cloud. This is from Heather Lutzy, Findability University. Wonderful, wonderful gal. She gives all kinds of amazing tips and tricks just like this. Yeah. You know what your website says about you. I know what my website says about me. Oh, yeah? What does a computer think about it? Does it agree? And so, yes, you go in and you go to the word art site and you put all the text on the front page of your website in there, and it makes a word cloud, and it shows you the biggest, the most populated with the words that occur most often, and they're bigger and they're where. Absolutely. Do I see that those 5 biggest words really define me, or, oh my gosh, they're awful. They don't define me. That's not what I'm trying to say at all. Well, guess what? Again, he's holding his hands up in 2 different directions. Here's how I see myself, okay? And here's the reality of where other people see myself. Here's how I see myself demonstrating my product and my value to the market. Absolutely. Here's the people over here not buying it. Wait a minute. Where's that disconnect? And do I have the guts to stand up and do it? I think, call it all back. If you are self-serving and self-seeking out of your own benefit, you're going to miss it. You're going to see this growing apart over and over again because you're lying to yourself about who you really are, and you're not. Go out in the wilderness, go whitewater rafting with me. We'll bring those back into focus. However, if you're self-seeking because you're performance-driven, you're just an alpha male, Jess. You're just trying to make yourself better and better and better. But you notice that the reason you're doing it is not about you. It's about what you can bring to the marketplace, what you can bring to other people's lives. You are not just going to be the Jess. You're going to be the best Jess you can be, and that benefits everyone outside of you. Now suddenly, that self-seekingness, it's altruistic. And suddenly, you are a better person for it. Your life is a better person for it. Your relationships, your teams, everybody under you as a leader is better for it because you are seeking to make yourself a better person. That's where that self-seeking comes from. That's where the drive is.
So we've got to talk about why it's bold. Why is it bold? What makes it bold to go out and to be willing to explore and play with risk and risk taking?
Because nobody does it. Come on. It's bold because nobody does it, right? The definition of bold is it's something outside your daily routine, okay? It's unexpected. Again, our brains love that unexpected stuff, but it's also unnerving. So we don't do it. Hey, would you like to go visit the office you have your office, your main office in Denver. Would you like to visit the other office in Baltimore or in Bangalore? I'm going to go to Baltimore. Why? Because Bangalore's scary. I don't know it. I don't understand it, right? This is where people step off that. They don't do it, Jess. They don't do bold. Or if they do bold, they're doing it in the way that someone sells an NFL player on wear this helmet and you'll be safe. It's a lie. But we lie to ourselves every time. We lie to ourselves, and that's where the imposter syndrome comes from, because some people purposefully say, I'm going to buy into who I think I am versus who I actually am. And this is where this terrible, terrible place of people who are on a long enough timeline, they're not having fun, they're not enjoying life, and people are noticing it, and they're asking them what needs to change, and they don't know. Well, the idea is do something bold, Step outside that comfort zone, take a real look at who you are, not who you say you are, and watch things explode.
There you have it. Eric Sprinkle. I'm telling you. See, we have waited too long to have him come join us on the Voice of Bold Business Radio.
Crazy.
It is crazy. It's crazy time right now, right here.
Right.
In actually every way you want to define that word, I guess.
There
Holy
you go.
cow. All the program notes, probably not quoting me just now, will be at thevoiceofboldbusiness.com/P164. That's voiceofboldbusiness.com/P for program 164. You can also search for Eric Sprinkle or word art. And it comes down to the words we use, the way we use it. You'll notice the nuance in the conversation and how we took in parts of awareness and how we took in the different ways that people think. And what it came back down to, Eric tied them all together every single time, every single time, every single time. So there's something to be said for taking a look. Maybe record yourself for a day. That might be really scary for some people.
Yeah.
So, if you don't want to go put your stuff in the website over there, wordart.com, go record yourself. Listen to the words you use. Do you like what you hear? Would you listen to yourself if you didn't know it was your own voice? I mean, these are the kinds of things that are nuanced in our leadership, because it's when we embrace that, when we take those nuances, that's what's going to set us apart and actually make us lead effectively for results, along with strengthening our leadership skills. So take a chance, take a risk, get out of your comfort zone, and think about it all in relationship and use the words as art.
Subscribe at thevoiceofboldbusiness.com and get more information, program notes, and past episodes. Bold leaders approach each situation and focus on action to achieve a higher level of leadership. Jessica Dewell, your business advocate, is the host of the Voice of Bold Business Radio. Thank you for joining us.